Chapter 103, Fainting Blood. When Lucien came to visit the door, he saw that Siewei was already sitting by the window, looking out at the scenery. It was dark, and the house was lit with lights. He walked in directly from the outside without warning, and opened his mouth to talk to Siewei, who would have thought that he would see blood all over the ground by a mistake, and it was extremely hideous by the dim and beating lights, and there were dead corpses nailed to the table where tea was made on weekdays. Lucien's whole face turned pale, his body staggered, his head was groggy, and he retreated directly from the room, and immediately turned his back and held onto the door frame and almost didn't vomit. How did Gong Gai Chen die? The stakes are very high, and the sword book and the sword and chain are packed inside. The blood on Siewei's hands hadn't been wiped clean, so he turned his head to look at him and said, "I killed it." Lucien's scalp exploded. "Didn't you ask him to come over to the house? Why did you kill him if you don't have river water?" Siewei said, "But the river water should be the well water." Lucien collapsed. "You're crazy." Siewei lowered his eyes and looked at his blood-stained fingers, sniffing the smell of blood in the room. His eyes revealed a little disgust, and he only said, "I didn't plan to let him go alive when I invited him, and if I didn't agree with him, I would kill him." When Lucien heard this, he finally calmed down. "Do you have a plan?" Siewei said, "No." Lucien took a deep breath, and seemed to be enduring something, but he still didn't look back. "You are a person from the heavenly sect, and you invited him to the mansion. He is still in the capital now. How can you escape if something happens? What do you want to explain to the heavenly sect, and how will it end in the future?" Siewei's expression was extremely quiet. "I don't know. I don't know." Lucien jumped up. Sven's face was a little distorted by today's horrific thing, and he couldn't help but roar at him. "I don't have a plan. I don't know how to explain it." "But you actually killed someone. Is your uncle Siejuan an evil for you or me? What to do? What to do? How dare you do such a thing?" His voice was very loud. Siewei finally frowned lightly and said, "What are you panicking about?" "What is he panicking about? Who the wouldn't panic when this kind of thing happens?" In Lucien's opinion, Siewei is definitely not an impulsive person, and he should never do such a thing. Lucien couldn't calm down at all. He turned his head and wanted to reason with Siewei, but with his head slightly sideways, he caught a glimpse of the shocking blood on Siewei's snow-white clothes, and felt a dizziness in his head and weakness under his feet. So this irritability that could not be vented went to the sword and sword book in the house. He shouted indignantly, "You two don't clean up this house, drag your husband down first, change into clean clothes, and come back." Jianshu was puzzled. "Why?" Lucien raised a hand to block his face, for fear that he would see the scene in the house again, and jumped to his feet angrily. "Why else? Laozi is fainting." Daekan. Book of Swords. Chapter 104, Shadow of the Heavenly Sect. When Zhang Xuning left from the Shuxiang Inn, she was finally a little relieved. From beginning to end, she never reported herself home, only asked Ren Weizi a lot of words, and also chatted with him about the style of Shudi, learned about the situation of the salt farm, and occasionally mentioned Yu Fangyan, while secretly observing Ren Weizi's expression. I have to say that there is a girl who is stupid, and her intuition is really not bad. Although he inherited the family business after repeated defeats in the imperial examination, Ren Weizi is a scholar after all, speaks well, and has a good upbringing, but there is no treacherous Philistine of a businessman. Not to mention that it is just a fake marriage. Even if it is a real husband, it is enough to be a husband. When she waited for the carriage again, she glanced back at the still-lit lamp on the inn, and finally put on a sincere smile. "But like this, I went to the Jinyiwei cell to see Yu Fangyan first, and then went to the Shuxiang Inn to talk to Ren Weizi. There was a lot of delay on the way, and when I returned to Jiang's mansion, it was already dark." Zhang Boyu and Meng Shi were waiting a little anxiously in the house. The people in the house carried the lantern all the way to the front of the house, and she walked in, bowed down and confessed first, saying, "My daughter did something on the way, and she came back very late, which made her parents worried." Meng opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But he didn't think that Zhang Boyu was in front, and said, "The matter of the Yanji Marquis mansion has just come out, and the official government has arrested a group of Tianjia rebels, and no one in the capital today dares to go out. You are still wandering outside at night, like something." Zhang Xuning lowered her eyes and said nothing. Meng Shi sighed, and now his attitude towards Zhang Xuning was unusually kind, and he actually persuaded Zhang Boyu in turn. "There are such big things in and outside the palace, you are not scared, don't scare the child at this time. Didn't you say you wanted to ask about the situation in the palace?" Zhang Boyu gave up. He also waited for Zhang Xuning to not return for a long time, so he was a little anxious, but he didn't mean to scold her, so he quickly calmed down and asked her what was going on in the palace. "The first is the dismissal of the companion. The second is to leave Zhang Suiwai alone." Zhang Boyu and the Meng family both knew that there was a great joy in the palace, when Jiu of the Fixiang Hall was pregnant and was promoted to Wenziyi, and they also heard that Zhang Suiwai was rewarded for her meritorious service, but they did not know the specific details and reasons. Zhang Xuning described the scene in the plum garden one by one. Including Yao Shi's bad luck later, Zhang Suiwai was rewarded and Wenziyi's blue eyes were also said. Zhang Boyu said, "It's not necessarily a good thing." Meng Shi also sighed, "Muxiu will be destroyed by the forest wind, so it's a bit eye-catching." Zhang Xuning said in her heart, "You are underestimating Zhang Suiwai's ability. It's just that she thinks so in her heart, but she doesn't say it." Zhang Boyu shook his head and said, "I would rather her be well, and return home with Sister Ning. This eventful autumn, intrigue in the palace, can harm people once, can harm twice. Last time it was the unlucky girl of the Yao family. Do you know if it will be Sister Hui or next time?" Meng Shi frowned. She still thought about it a little more, and said, "Sister Hui has been cautious since she was a child, and she can only think that Ziyi Niang's baby is particularly valued by the saint, and the whole palace will not dare to slack off. The saints have dismissed their companions for this reason, and the younger ones may not have a chance to take advantage of it. If Ziyi Niang really gives birth to a dragon son one day, Sister Hui can get the blue eyes of her mother, which can be regarded as a wealth and danger. Where in the world is there a white pie?" Zhang Xuning said in her heart, "This is exactly the reason." But she didn't speak for a while, and she seemed a little silent, which made people mistakenly think that she was sour and depressed. Meng Shi actually comforted her in turn and said, "But Sister Ning, don't be discouraged. Something happened to the Yanji Ho mansion. After all, our two mansions have secretly talked about the marriage contract. Sister Ning, it's better for you to keep a low profile. One door has the same honor and disgrace. With Sister Hui in front of you, you can also benefit from it in the future." Although the Meng family didn't like Sister Ning's past style, Sister Hui was able to enter the palace by relying on Sister Ning. She still remembered that she was Zhang Xuning's biological mother, so she would not be too favoritistic. How much more so are these difficult times? One door up and down, one is prosperous, one is lost, and one must not deviate from morality at such a time. Zhang Xuning raised her eyes and glanced at her a little strangely. In the end, Meng put the honor and disgrace of a door in front. Is so kind to herself. If it was in the previous life, she might have softened her heart, and her eyes would be red. But after experiencing life and death once, Zhang Xuning actually felt that there was no deep feeling, as if Meng Shi was good or bad for herself. It was difficult for her to have any deeper emotional fluctuations. What's more, it's just such a painless relief. She replied flatly, "Yes." Zhang Boyu looked at her expression, saw her coldness, sighed in his heart, but he didn't want to say anything, but remembered something, turned his head to Meng Shi and said, "I have something to say to Ning Yetu alone. You go back to the room to rest first." Meng Shi was stunned for a moment. "Is there anything you can't say in front of her?" Suddenly felt a little dissatisfied in her heart, but the words were spoken by Zhang Boyo, so she had to suppress the unhappiness in her heart and leave and go back to the room first. After she left, Zhang Xuning raised her head and looked at Zhang Boyo. Without Zhang Bo's lobbying, she knew what was going on. At this time, his heart beat faster for no reason, and he only asked, "Is it that the previous thing to trust my father has been done? The boxes of things you handed over to me last time are valuable, but they are too eager to redeem, and it is inevitable that people will take the opportunity to lower the price." As a father, he didn't want to sell the good things of the home mansion in the past, so he only dealt with half of it. "I asked the account office to carry the other half into our treasury, calculated the middle feed, and took 18,000 taels out of the house, which was bought by the house at a discount." Zhang Boyo took a box and put it in front of Zhang Xuning. "A total of 30,000 taels, look at it, it's all here. 30,000 taels. You must know that even if the entire Qingyuan Bafu is hollowed out, I am afraid that you may not be able to take out 30,000 taels immediately. It can be seen how much Yan Lin has given her over the years." Zhang Xuning opened the box, and slightly, it was full of silver tickets of one color and 1,000 taels, and a thick pile of 30 tickets. She whispered, "Father bothered." Zhang Boyo said, "The Yanji Marquis mansion also has old friends with us, and if you can help some, you can help some. It's just that the case of the home mansion will soon be handed over to the 3 divisions for trial, and if you are prepared to help later, it is fine, but if you want to dredge the joints, I am afraid it will." Zhang Xuning said, "My daughter has a number, and she won't mess around." Having said that, Zhang Boyo does feel that she has become more thoughtful in recent days, and even in the words of officialdom, it is. "The city is deeper." Said that this time when Zaiyi was in the plum garden in the palace, he listened to Ning Yetu's words and always faintly felt that she had seen through this game early, but she didn't get involved, and she didn't want to be in the limelight. But he still couldn't help but worry about the things in the court. At that moment, it was inevitable that Zhang Xuning would tell a few more words, afraid that she would make something happen with such a large sum of money alone. Zhang Xuning responded one by one again. This time it was not that she didn't take Zhang Boyo's words to heart, on the contrary, she knew that Zhang Boyo's warnings were right. The case of the Marquis of Yanji's mansion will be tried by the 3 divisions, and the Holy Governor will be the pro-governor. Where is it so easy to dredge the joints? If you accidentally make a mistake, your head will fall to the ground. It's just that the imperial court has never been monolithic, there are always gaps, just look carefully or not, whether you can find it. If you talk about the news, I am afraid that there will be no one who is more well informed than the current Zheng Bao, but she is outside the palace and it is inconvenient to contact the palace, even if there is such a person, she can't use it at the moment. Outside the palace, there is only Zhou Yinzi. After Zhang Xuning took the money from Zhang Boyo, she posted the 3,000 taels of the piano into it, with a total of 33,000 taels of silver, and found Zhou Yinzi the next day to find out about the current case of the Marquis of Yanji. Although Zhou Yinzi was already 1,000 households in Jinyue, he could only smile bitterly at this time, and said, "The case has been handed over to the 3rd division, and Jinyue only has the authority to interrogate the prisoners with the criminal department, but it is impossible to inquire about the above matters. What's more, the position of 1,000 households is too low, at most he can go to prison and take care of the second girl, but he can't take care of everything." And the original Zheng Shangshu of the criminal department left office, and Gu Chunfang, the former imperial historian of Henan province, just took office in the past 2 days, and the struggle between Jinyue and the criminal department was too hard pressed by this person, and I am afraid that there will not be many opportunities to intervene in this case. The three divisions of the three divisions refer to the criminal department, Dali Temple, and inspectors. There's no brocade guard here. But if the people of the Jinyi Guard want to stretch out their hands inside, they will be attacked by the three law divisions in unison, which can be said to be difficult to move an inch. Jiang Swining said, the Yanji Ho mansion has a great cause, and there are countless things that have been confiscated, and now the evidence should still be sorted out and settled. Although you can't intervene, but the people of the three Dharma divisions are in and out of the prison, so you should pay attention to any strange people. If she remembers correctly, the case of the Marquis of Yanji's mansion is very strange. At the beginning, the correspondence between the Ho mansion and the King of Pingnan against the party was found. In fact, it was actually the Dingfei prince who might have been lying in the tomb of the righteous boy 20 years ago, but after the third division was interrogated for more than half a month, there was an extra letter. This letter was written by Yan Mu to the Tianjiao anti-party, and the letter actually mentioned that he wanted to secretly support the forces of the Tianjiao and was willing to integrate the Tianjiao members into the army. As soon as the letter came out, it was immediately called ironclad. Half of the top and bottom of the government were cut off, exiled for thousands of miles, and when they arrived in the land of Biosmoke Miasma, few civil and military people in the Manchu dynasty dared to speak for them. Why did this letter appear half a month later? Why did Yan Mu's letter to the Tianjiao rebel party be copied from home? Besides, raiding homes is not particularly fast, but it is definitely not slow. If this letter had been copied in the morning, it should have been delivered to the emperor. Jiang Swining didn't know what was going on in the middle, but if there was any opportunity in the middle, and she missed the opportunity because she thought there was no opportunity, she would have to regret it. It was only then that he gave an explanation to Zhou Yin. Although Zhou Yinzi didn't understand why she would say such a thing, a thought flashed in her mind, and she remembered that she was also sitting in the hall that day and broke his hidden thoughts, and that faint unfathomable feeling resurfaced in her heart. This second girl seems to be getting more and more difficult. Zhou Yinzi didn't know who was behind her, but the more times like this, the more she didn't dare to slack off. After returning to the Jinyi Guard's yamen, he seemed to live inside and outside the prison, going around from time to time. I often meet people from the criminal department. For example, that Gu Chunfang, and for example, Zhang Sha, the director of the cleaning department of the criminal department, whom Gu Chunfang trusted. The people of the three law divisions are naturally not used to seeing Jinyue, but there is no reason to drive him away, just because they Jinyue are not dead and want to meddle in the middle of the matter, and there is a lot of irony between unkind words. Zhou Yinzi didn't care. In this way, it didn't take long for him to discover such a strange person. It seemed to be a small official under the criminal department, who often followed him around the prison, and his eyes always looked at the people in the prison, as if he was planning something. Zhou Yinzi observed for 2 days in a row, and finally felt that this person really had a ghost. On the third day, he found an opportunity to block the man directly in the alley and press the knife against the opponent's neck. Under the intimidation, I really asked for something important. Without saying a word, after secretly controlling people and imprisoning them in his own mansion, Zhou Yinzi visited Jiang Swining overnight and said, I arrested a person. It is the dark line buried in the official mansion by the heavenly sect, and I got the order of Mr. Gongai. I want to find an opportunity to submit a letter to the criminal department, saying that this letter can make the whole mansion irreversible. But these days, the Mr. Gongai suddenly had no news, and he contacted him many times but did not respond, which made him panic. He himself was very afraid that something would happen to this Mr. Gongai, and he didn't dare to make a noise, so he became greedy with this letter, and wanted to use this to extort a sum of money from the home mansion, and leave when the matter was done. Unexpectedly, I showed my whereabouts under nervousness, and I caught it squarely. Jiang Swining's scalp exploded when she heard it. There is also a shadow of Tianjiao in the case of the Marquis of Yanji's mansion, And even the famous Mr. Gongai is involved. Merely. What happened to such an important person, and there was no news on the way. Her pupils constricted slightly, and she really couldn't care so much about it, so she took a deep breath and asked directly, "Did you get the letter? If you can get this letter, it will definitely be a huge turnaround."